Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Bamboo Ceiling Podcast. When it comes to horror movies, I think we all can agree that Asians make the best. Movies like The Ring and The Grudge, those are the ones that kind of stick out, right? So much so that Westerners have to like copy it and imitate it and make series out of it too. Um, so what is it about Asian culture that makes us more spiritually aware, right? To the point where um, either we or someone we know have had a spiritual or paranormal experience. So, do you guys have any experiences that you guys would like to share?
Yeah, like I feel like in my life, I've had a lot, right? Um, and to that point where sometimes I'm not sure if it's because in our culture we're so sensitive to it that sometimes we look for it. Like for instance, um, I've had an experience where it was during freshman year of college. I was living with my parents. My room is in the basement, and so I was doing my homework. It was late. It was probably like midnight, almost 1 o'clock. And so I was tired doing my homework, and my desk is right by the door, right? And my door is cracked open just a little bit. And so I'm doing my homework, falling. I felt like I was falling asleep, right? But then I could see my little brother come by the door, right? And because there's a bathroom downstairs, and so I was like, "Hey, Yang," and he didn't say nothing, so I just assumed he went to the bathroom. And then I kept on doing my homework. 5 minutes later, he comes back, right? And you could just kind of see him through the crack, and I could see the back of his head. And I was like, "Hey, Yang," and he turns around, and it wasn't my brother,
Whoa,
right?
damn.
And like
How
the
old are you?
so it was freshman year, so I was
Okay.
18, right? I was
Mhm.
18, so I was like, "Oh shoot," right? But here's the thing, right? It's a memory. It's not something that I like because I was tired. I was doing homework, so I'm like, could it just be that I dreamt it or I imagined it, right? And so I was like, I don't know. But then there are experiences where other people also experienced it with me where I can't deny that at
Right,
all,
right.
right? And like for instance, we used to live at an apartment, so me and three of my other friends, and so me and my one friend Jim, we slept in the same room, right? And so I remember one night I was just sleeping, and I remember looking at the closet, and all of a sudden I couldn't move, right? So it was sleep
Sleep
paralysis, right?
paralysis.
And so I couldn't move, and I was like, okay, that's weird, right? I was like, okay, whatever. I know what this is. I've never had it. Well, I maybe have had it one other time, but like, whatever. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Can't move. I'm gonna wait until I can move. And then all of a sudden, I felt this presence just come by my ear, right? And then it said something to me in Hmong. It said, "Hey, Pepa talong go to tai te," right?
Oh shoot.
And right when I heard the voice,
Dang.
I got scared. I was like, I wasn't scared. I couldn't move. I wasn't scared. But when I heard a voice, I got really scared, right?
Was
'Cause
it loud and audible, or was it like
it was
whispering?
audible. It
Okay.
was just like I could feel the presence like come to my ear.
Okay.
And I was like, the heck? Right? That's weird, right? And then all of a sudden I heard the voice and I was like, oh shoot. So I got really scared. And at the time, I grew up in a Christian family, right? But at the time, I don't know. I don't know Jesus. I don't know nobody, right? And so always remember being taught like if any demonic presence come, you would use the name of Jesus. So I'm just like, Jesus help,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And right when I said that, it went away, right? So I was like, oh shoot. And then like I'm exhausted from like fighting, right? So I'm just like, okay, whatever. I'm gonna go back to sleep. And so as I'm sleeping, I hear my friend Jim come next to me and sleep and lay down, right? And he's like talking shit. He's like, freaking Apple. Like he's talking with his girlfriend or something. He's like, freaking Apple. He didn't even hear me. And right when I heard that, I woke up, I was like, what are you talking about, dude? He's like, bro, I just got
He did
into
too?
sleep paralysis
Yeah.
in the living room like
Whoa.
10 minutes ago. And I was yelling your name so loud and you didn't hear me. And then I just got the chills all over my body. I was like, dude,
That
like
just
an
happened.
hour earlier, I just got sleep paralysis. Right? And I told him the story, and so like that just confirms that there was something there. At least to me, that confirms that there was something happening there. So I can't deny that.
Yeah, like I've heard of so many stories of our like family relatives that macho, right? The medical term or the McGad term is sleep paralysis. I think for me, like I grew up in a Christian home too, in that where everything was sensitive, like the spiritual realm was so sensitive. But I've seen, and this is my experience where I think it has shaped my foundation and my faith, where I know that we're not alone or there is a realm beyond this physical realm. And I've seen a couple of demon possessions where they actually manifested, right? And this is crazy when these two worlds collide and people have different worldviews. And I was like around 18, 19, I think. And I remember going to like an exorcism. There's a couple of pastors, exorcising, casting out this demon. Um and and there was power in the name of Jesus, in that where you physically see the demons vomited out of this person. It was this lady vomited, and there's like 6 or 7 of them like physically vomited out, and the resisting in that where it was so surreal that it looked like a movie. But I still remember to this day where I'm like, holy crap, like this is something that I always felt like there was a belief system that I believed in, but to actually see it changes you and makes you realize like, crap, this thing is real. And I do think that we are more sensitive as a culture in that, but seeing it is actually, really makes it come to life in that. And so the funny thing about this was, after that, so I went to this exorcism, there was demons cast out, and this lady stayed with the pastor for a few weeks, right? Just to make sure that, she's in good hands and being washed or whatnot. A couple of days after, she ran out of the house and ran to the neighbors, and the neighbors called the cops. And the cops came and they took this lady to the mental health institution, and they're like, she's crazy or not, but the pastor was like, no, she is possessed. And thinking of like how crazy that sounds to someone who doesn't believe in the spiritual realm, like the two collided. So she was locked up in a mental health institution, while the pastor's like, no, there is a spiritual battle going on. And when you see that collide, it's so crazy, where that's why it's like, how do you differentiate or decipher if it's a spiritual attack over a mental health issue?
Yes.
Right. And I think living in the Western world and colliding it with a more spiritual Asian culture, man, those are totally opposite things. Where for me, I lean more towards the spiritual realm in that. I don't know. So
Yeah, because for me, if we were to compare and contrast between our culture, Asian culture, and like the Western culture, I always, for instance, talk about like imaginary friends, right? Like in Western cultures, they'd always say, "Hey, my kid has an imaginary friend. Always playing dolls with whatever," and they even have names for these friends, right? But for Asians, we are so heavily ingrained in touch with the spiritual realm that we always defaulted to like Modana. Like there's something paranormal going around. If my child is playing with somebody or something that I can't see, that's got to be more to it than just my kid having a fictitious friend. And I also grew up in I wouldn't call it a shamanistic family, but my great grandmother was a shaman, and seeing some of the stuff that she did, it really opened up my eyes to believe that, hey, there is something else out there than just what we think. Um, one time she came over to our house and was talking to my dad, and I was just a kid. And being a kid, I was always like interested in what she had to say. So she said, yeah, last night, there were some spirits that came to attack her, and they wanted to take her, and one of them bit her wrist. And I said, oh, Bob, tell me about it, and then she would say, oh, yeah, mo dad la tokuna. And then I said, let me see. And so she rolled up her sleeve, and yeah, there was like 2
bite marks.
oh, they look like hickey marks, but they were like perfectly round.
Wow.
Yeah, and And I just asked her what happened. She said, yeah, then like new one of your Ning spiritual shamanistic stuff, and that thing took left went out the window. So I kind of grew up around that, seeing that too, and I just feel like Western culture, when it comes to spiritual stuff, it's used more as like entertainment, right? Like in horror flicks or movies. But for Asians, it's a real thing, right? Would you guys agree or disagree on that?
Yeah, I think I've always had this, when I see horror movies or paranormal activity, it has never been entertainment for me because it hits closer to home and it's real life, and that where you see Hollywood and you see entertainment. And for me, I take that through my lens as something that is real. And for me, I feel more, I guess, sensitive, or how I just interpret it differently compared to like how it's more entertainment and the more civilized culture
yeah.
here, right?
Yeah, but because we're so sensitive to it, do you think sometimes we miss the mental health part of it? Like, what if they do just have schizophrenia, right? Or they have some sort of anxiety, but we call it something else? Like, it's so hard to tell, like.
No, I'm with you. I think we do lean more spiritual, right? But there is a mental health component that we can help, kind of dig that out. But I also feel like the battlefield and everything is in the mind. And I do feel like they, from a faith or Christian background, we do have a spiritual enemy in that. And so I think there's a lot of attacks in the mind where I think I do believe PTSD is real. So like mental health and stuff like that, where there's trauma and you need to like, unwrap that and, do what you got to do in that. But I also feel like, in that, like we can't lean too far into mental health and negate or forget about the spiritual realm, and that as that thing is real. Like I've seen manifestation of demons and you're just like, holy crap. Like, people that haven't seen that, like you can overlook that, but man, when you see that stuff is real.
Yeah,
like
right.
that stuff is real.
Yeah, because speaking of the old days, there weren't mental institutions, there weren't any health clinics, right? So nobody can check to see if you are chemically imbalanced. So we tend to chalk everything up to like the spiritual realm. So like you said, yeah, PTSD or anxiety or depression, I feel like those are kind of the three that like sometimes we misread, and because we lean heavily on the spiritual side, so we call it something else. And yeah, I hear where you're coming from, Apple, where sometimes we can mistakenly diagnose somebody, right? Yeah.
Do you feel like, this is my theory, but do you feel like it can start out as mental health, right? Like PTSD or anxiety or depression, but then a spiritual component takes over in that space?
it could
Because
very well.
I
For
feel
sure,
like I think it could start on those grounds, right? But I also feel like then, like, I do feel like when someone goes to their ends meet and they don't know how to figure out or have answers for their life, there's more of a spiritual component that gets added onto that. Or I think deep down inside, that's not who they are, but because there's these more things that affect what they are feeling in those moments.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just think that if it doesn't help that there's such a negative stigma to mental health in the Hmong community, especially in the Hmong
Oh,
community.
for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
For
Because
sure.
like, how many times have you guys had it in the old days where your parents had an issue and they had to call someone to come talk to them, right?
Right.
And because of those kinds of things and how culturally we deal with certain things, like, it's hard to tell your cousin that you have mental health because it's so negative in our community, and I applaud these organizations that are starting, and these Hmong organizations that are starting to bring more awareness to mental health.
Mental health, yes.
Like I was one of those people like that thought that depression was just people looking for attention and things like that, and until you become depressed, right? And so I just I applaud these Hmong people that are starting to kind of bring awareness to that. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's really hard to tell, especially in our culture where we are so sensitive and that we have such a negative stigma towards mental health, right? So it's really hard to tell, and the lines aren't always clear.
Do you feel like the lines are clear when when someone starts speaking some other language to you, or when they start acting like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think I challenge the mental health aspect in that, right? Or it is schizophrenia, or it is, bipolar, when you see something that is just out of this world.
Yeah, that's
And
crazy.
I think that's the extreme, but I think there are times where that's misdiagnosed in that, where it's like, no, I think there may be something
else.
more
Right.
than just the mental health
Yeah.
aspect. But I do agree that our community, we struggle with taboo topics or
Yes.
just things to talk about, in the sense of, hey, we are struggling and we need help mentally to really just process things and able to just unravel just things that we don't know how to process. And I think there needs to be that, but I also feel like after this conversation, I'm still gonna lean towards spiritual.
Yeah, we can't
So-
just dismiss the spiritual aspect of things, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's one thing too, where it's like we are sensitive to that. So Asians, you rarely see like an atheistic Asian. I'm not saying that they're coming out with the Gen Zs now and I'm agnostic, but it's because we're so rooted in a spiritual culture and so sensitive that we just know that, man, there's something out there. Like if you're not Christian, you're shaman or you're Buddhist or something or whatever, it may be. We believe in something outside of the physical realm because we've been so rooted and sensitive to, everything that has happened around us.
I agree. Yeah.
So
Well, what do you guys think? Do you guys think we are alone, or do you guys think that it just has something to do with mental health? We would love to hear what you guys think. Leave a comment below, subscribe, give us a like. Until next time, later. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode of The Bamboo Ceiling, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at #TheBambooCeiling. Until next time, use your voice.